Great. And I will share, if I can find it, I will share the agenda that Celeste sent me.
And did you want me to make you host and I can, or co-host? I can hang out till Celeste gets here.
Either way, it looks like I'm able to share as is. So
All
can
right.
everybody see the welcome slide?
Yep.
All right, great.
Yeah.
Well, welcome to this meeting of the Alternative Voting Methods Task Force. In case anyone joined after I said why it's me and not Celeste right now, she is at a meeting testifying about why we should have a better voting method to elect county commissioners in Colorado. So she's doing our work. And I'm holding down the fort until she hopefully gets back. So here's a tentative agenda for our meeting. We could talk about maybe some action items that we might consider to achieve proportional representation. Depending on who is here and how much they already know, maybe we'll review a little bit about how proportional RCV, aka single transferable vote, works. We'll talk about some of the dueling citizens initiatives that are being proposed for the November ballot on voting methods. There's a lot going on, which may or may not actually get to the ballot, but stuff is in progress. Hopefully we'll talk a little bit about the primary election reform study and where we're at with that. Any news from other states and future project ideas and leadership. Anyone have anything they want to add to this? Going once, going twice. All right. So as we do every meeting, I'll put up here is our voting methods position. Do we have anyone who's here for the first time? I mean, I'm thinking not. So maybe we can skip over some of this beginning stuff. We also have our meeting norms, which everyone agreed to when you registered for the meeting. Most important being the league speaks with one voice based on our positions reached through member consensus, and to speak on behalf of the league, you need the agreement of league leadership. So Celeste wrote up a little summary about what we talked about at our last meetings. We spent a lot of time talking about a whole raft of constitutional initiatives that were proposed by Kent Theory on multiple topics. One of which is proposing that we go to non-party based all candidate primaries with top 4 instant runoff voting for the general election. This is the system used in Alaska now. And I'm just reading off the slides Celeste made here. Timely election results reporting, measure to try to require election reporting on election night. One about changing the way candidates get access to the ballots. Instant runoff vote, ranked choice voting for presidential elections. There's an open question here of how that would work with the National Popular Vote Compact. And special elections to fill state legislative vacancies. I'm guessing that this next bullet point was Celeste discussing how vacancies in Colorado are currently filled. This is one of her big things she's working on, and I think she's talked about that in here before, so maybe I'll skip that unless anyone wants to hear more about it. Yeah, Deborah.
Sorry, I had my mute on. I don't understand the nuance of the 4th bullet, IRV for presidential general election with national popular vote compact, with states popular vote only be for the votes for the 2 finals. I missed the nuance of that. What is that?
I actually don't know either. So, I mean, Celeste sent me these slides about half an hour ago when she realized she wasn't going to be here. So I'm not completely expert at everything that's on them. The issue with the National Popular Vote Compact is, so Colorado has signed on to this. And if the country gets to a point where enough states have signed on to it to make up 270 electoral votes, the agreement is that all states in the compact will give all their electoral votes to the popular vote winner for president. And I assume this is a question about how instant runoff voting for presidential general elections, I don't really know what the question is there.
My guess is that the question is, what is the number of voters? And there are more people who cast a ballot. Maybe some of them don't actually make any choice. Maybe some people choose somebody who ends up being eliminated and they don't rank anybody else. And the National Popular Vote has a question, it's trying to figure out, it has to have a divisor, right? You have to figure out how many people voted nationwide and how many people voted for a particular candidate. Well, how many people voted in Colorado? I guess the question is, do you count everyone who marked any ballots, or just the final round, or?
Yeah, you would have to, right, it's not clear how IRV ballots would be tallied as votes to contribute to computing the national popular vote.
Yeah, I
Gotcha.
don't
Thank
quite
you very
understand why
much.
you wouldn't just use, say that everyone who, I don't even know how they do it in other states. If you don't mark your ballot at all, are you a voter in the presidential election? If you mark other contests, but not the presidential contest, are you part of the divisor in the overall,
With that, but I assume that the way the popular vote works is that undervotes shouldn't matter. It'll just be how many votes are registered for each candidate and who got the plurality or the majority or whatever of votes cast. So I'm not
Oh,
so
here-
worried about votes not cast, but still.
Suddenly I'm thinking completely opposite sense. So suppose that Bernie Sanders is the third place contestant in Colorado. Does Colorado say at the national popular vote level that we had anybody voting for Bernie Sanders? He was eliminated.
Right.
The final round only has two candidates. You're obviously going to say how many people in Colorado voted for those two, but how do you determine how many voted for all the other candidates? You use the first choices? What do you do?
I see.
That's a pretty gnarly question.
It is.
Great
Okay,
question.
I
Well, so here's an even gnarlier one. What if, nationally, the top two are Democrat and Republican, but maybe in Colorado, one of those two was eliminated before the final round because we really liked the Green Party or the Libertarian Party that year. So our final round had no votes for one of the two major candidates. How would you count that?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so that's, I think, a hard question. All right. Anything else before we go on? I think this is.
I got right in. Gene McClellan is running it.
Yeah, I'm running it because Celeste is testifying about a bill for how we elect county commissioners.
Okay, hey, Gene, I'm trying to get Frank to join.
Oh,
So, and I'll mute myself and then we'll see if I can't get him to join.
okay.
Unless your meeting room is full. Is your meeting room full?
I don't think that's a
No.
thing.
Okay, I'll be right back with you.
Okay. No, we're
Thanks,
definitely not.
Chris.
Okay, did you get this? Let me mute myself if I can. Okay, there we are.
All right, great. This next bullet point also looks like something that Celeste put on here that I'm not sure what she was going to talk about. Oh, Idaho, Minnesota, and Rhode Island efforts to adopt better voting methods. Betsy, you want to speak to Idaho?
Well, there's an open primaries initiative out in the public. It will probably make the ballot. The Attorney General, who's a real creepy guy, has vowed to block it. So but it's very popular. but reading all the materials from you all, from Oregon, Washington, Minnesota, the language being used is a little sloppy, but I understand why they're using it. But
Sloppy language, I think, is a problem in this area. There's a
Yeah.
lot of unintended consequences that can happen from choices that are not sufficiently well thought out.
that's right. Thank you.
Anyone want to speak to what's going on in Minnesota and Rhode Island? Because I don't really know.
Okay, hi, this is Mark Bonhorst here in spirit and voice, but not in video, unfortunately.
Hi, Mark.
They have the ranked choice voting option for local jurisdictions is going through the legislature this year. And it looks like it's going to go on through. The Secretary of State is behind it. I mean, Rhode Island, I know about what was going on there. They had, I think this is from last month, but they had a select Senate commission to look at alternative voting systems, alternatives to plurality voting. And they issued a report in December, which is pretty thorough. They didn't come to any recommendations.
Okay,
That's all I know.
great. Thanks. That's more than I knew. Okay, past meeting videos and slide decks can be accessed on our webpage as usual. All right, let's go through and do introductions, and I am going to stop the share now so we can all see each other a little better. I'll start. I'm Jen Cleland. I'm with the Boulder League. With Celeste, I'm the co-leader of the voting methods team for the Boulder League, and I'm pinch hitting for Celeste tonight. And why don't we just do tag team? So I'll call on Pat.
Hi, I'm Pat Venturo. I'm also with the Boulder County League and the voting methods team for a number of years. And it's a very interesting, complicated issue. So everything we can learn about it, the better off we'll be. And go ahead, Betsy.
I'm Betsy McBride. I'm in Boise, Idaho. I'm the co-president of the Idaho League, past president of the Colorado League, a long time ago, and still a member of the Colorado League.
How about other Betsy? You're muted. There you go.
Sorry,
you
trying
go.
to figure that out. My name's Betsy Nord. I'm in Durango. I'm just a member of the La Plata County League of Women Voters here. Don't have any official capacity in any way, shape, or form, but I'm super interested in ranked choice voting and am hoping to get some stuff done. Would
Great.
love to actually understand this whole initiative thing. I never knew anything about that, and just looking at the links that Celeste sent for this meeting, started looking at those initiatives and now feel super overwhelmed. So that's all.
How about Deborah?
Oh, great. Deborah. Yeah, sorry.
Betsy, I'm from Durango also, so I didn't realize that you were joining. So this is great. I've been on this committee for a few months. The only thing I really contributed was starting to work on the study guide. I'm not sure what we call it right now, in terms of editing. And I've learned a lot in this process about how much more complex alternative voting methods are than I understood when I started. So I'm enjoying being on the committee. I'm learning a lot, and I'm not sure I'm contributing a lot yet, but hopefully we'll get there.
We're glad you're all here.
Thanks.
Neil, go.
Hi, I'm Neil McBurnett in Boulder, a member of the team in Boulder. I've been interested in election methods for decades. I've been a big fan of proportional representation, so I'm delighted to see that coming up today. I note that the multi-winner method for ranking ranked choice, does a good job of giving us proportional representation, but we increasingly see that it is a nightmare to audit. And so as
Successful.
who does a lot with auditing,
Bye.
trying to find methods that are better for that, like star voting, which has a wonderful proportional method, or approval voting, proportional approval voting. And I'm not a big fan of single winner ranked choice. And I need to leave early at about 6:30. So thank you all.
Mark?
Thanks. I'm from Minneapolis. I've been sitting in on meetings off and on for about 8 or 10 months, and it's been very valuable to me. One update from Minnesota, there was a voting rights symposium at the University of St. Thomas in February that had a whole hour on open primaries and ranked choice voting. It was quite impressive. But one thing that came up, there's a senator named Giesel from Alaska who won Senate District E. And she's the poster child for how ranked choice voting could really elect centrists and it would be all wonderful. Except when you look at the data, you see she won by 132 votes to get into the final round. So instant runoff voting almost stabbed her in the back. And if they had used a different algorithm with ranked choice voting, as some have suggested, where you count all the breadth of the support in determining the weakest candidate to eliminate, she would have won by 3,700 points. So I think that's a really good argument for why maybe you have a ranked choice voting statute or by initiative or constitutional amendment, but you need to leave flexibility to figure out which algorithm you're going to use, because it could be instant runoff voting is not the right algorithm. So I shared that with Celeste earlier. I don't know if she's had time to read anything.
Thanks, Mark. That's really interesting. I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, maybe if Celeste will just forward what I sent, be glad to. Or if somebody wants to give me an email, I can send it to you, Jean, and you can share it as you want.
I'll bet Celeste will forward it. She's just been busy with this.
Yeah, sure.
All afternoon. Chris. You're muted. Frank, you want to go?
Okay, I'm Chris Baum. I'm from North Glen, Colorado, and I am an approval voting party member.
Right, and Frank.
Good evening. I'm Frank Atwood. I'm also an approval voting party member, and I'm from Littleton, Colorado.
All righty, well, welcome everyone. And let me see if I can reshare the agenda. Just give me a second to find that. There we go. All right, so that was introductions. Ongoing news and events. The League of Greeley and Weld County lawsuits suing county
I'm
commissioners.
not sharing if you're intending. Oh, there you
Oh,
go.
we're not, okay, can you see it now? Got it? Good, okay. I don't know if Celeste intended an update about this Greeley Weld County lawsuit against the county commissioners for not following state redistricting rules. Anyone know anything about what's going on with that? Okay. Initiatives to change elections. I think this, I assume this refers to all those initiatives that Kent Theory proposed that we talked about last month. None of the final 4 have made it through the title board yet, but 23 more were filed. I don't know what those are about. The town of Superior is writing a home rule charter, and I know Celeste has talked to some of the people about, advocating for them to include the possibility of proportional representation. I don't know if she would have had an update about that. And just also this, and yes, Neil.
Oh, I was gonna just add something. I guess I'll just say it now. There's another piece of news that Celeste forwarded from Canada, and actually via Fair Vote Canada, which is a different organization than Fair Vote US, a really good, very strong on proportional representation in Canada. And there is a proposal that has been gaining strength in Canada to do something a little different than what we talk about. It's citizens' assemblies, but in this case, a citizens' assembly, so that's a randomly and representative chosen set of people in the country of Canada, kind of like a jury, to put together a proposal for better election methods. So in Canada, they've been talking about doing better election methods for a long time, and they keep reneging on their promises when they make it into the legislature. So unfortunately that failed, but it had widespread support from a bunch of different parties. So we're still hoping that Canada will do something both with better voting methods and with citizens' assemblies, which are a wonderful way to form public policy. Thank you.
Thanks, Neil. And then this is a announcement that Celeste often makes every month. Fair Vote Canada does a presentation on PR, Proportional Representation 101, a half-hour presentation with Q&A. It looks like the next one is March 15th at 6 p.m. I think it's on the 15th of the month every month, regardless of what day of the week it is. So Celeste recommends that highly. Next meeting date, unless anyone wants differently, Monday, March 18th, same time. That work for everybody?
Yes.
All right, and we welcome input on possible meeting topics. There's always following up on today's topics, which presumably we'll get to. Today's one of the things I want to talk about today is some possible action items to work on getting proportional representation a little bit further along. Possible General Assembly bills, the primary election reform study, presidential election, then the Fair Vote Canada. Neil, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I would just finally got through checking my calendar, and I'm actually busy on the 18th. So I would vote for another time, but you know, if that works for everybody else, then.
Well, I'm out of town the 25th.
Okay.
I don't know, and the 11th feels pretty soon. That's only 2 weeks from now. So I don't know, maybe we should wait I hope that Celeste is gonna get here, so maybe we should wait until she gets here to discuss the next meeting date.
Thank you.
All right. So here's the actual agenda that Celeste set out. First, to talk about action items to achieve proportional representation. This sort of sub-bullet point is optional depending on who's here and how familiar everyone is with how single transferable vote works. If you like, I have a short presentation about that I could give with an example of how it works, but if everybody feels like they know that already, I don't need to talk just to hear myself talk. And then some other things after that, citizen initiatives, the election reform study. Yeah. Anything anyone wants to add to the agenda? All right.
I would enjoy at least touching on the fact that there are multiple ways to do proportional representation. And the one that would be the easiest for us to adopt, it would be the hardest for us to audit. So.
Right. Yeah.
Auditing is important in Colorado, so.
Auditing is important in Colorado. Yeah, I think that's a difficult, that's actually something I have some naive questions I'd like to ask you about offline sometime.
That would actually be a good topic for a future meeting, because the place that I'm going to be on March the 18th is the Election Verification Network conference in Washington, D.C. And I'm organizing a panel on exactly the question of how do you audit proportional representation. So let's tee that up for a future meeting.
That sounds great. And I am really curious to know what jurisdictions that currently use STV do, if anything, in the way of auditing or ensuring election security.
Yeah, Alaska is, Australia is a great example. They've done it for maybe a century, and the people who are going to talk on my panel have proposed methods to them that they have just completely poo-pooed and done nothing about. So I think Colorado is the place to take a lead on actually doing a good job of that. But knowing what they do, yeah, I mean, I don't know of anyone else who does anything like the kind of auditing we do.
What do you know about Irish STV elections? Because that's another place that's been using STV in local elections for a long time.
I think they actually do the count by hand, and it's quite a spectacle that goes on for several days, and there's lots of people watching and stuff. So I think they probably feel confident about their method, even though it's very cumbersome.
Oh, okay, good to know.
Scotland does a whole lot of them. That's a great question for really everywhere. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm really curious to hear what other places do. I would hate to think that we couldn't have PR in Colorado only because we don't know how to audit.
I'd like to say, Neil, there are other ways to get to PR besides single transferable vote. They may not be as familiar, but is those methods using approval voting for PR, are they auditable?
The proportional approval voting method has been confirmed to be straightforward to audit. There's still questions about the best way to do it, but it's actually, in some sense, in my mind, the most straightforward to give the citizens confidence that what they wanted happened. But as I said, I think we can come back and talk about that after we've had the panel that will give much more definitive answers to those questions. But absolutely, proportional approval voting, star voting in their proportional method, I think they actually still have, I think, several methods under consideration, but I think that's likely to be anything that doesn't eliminate people one by one is much better. And so there are probably other methods of tallying proportional ballots that ranked ballots that would also not have this problem. So that's something else I'm going to add to my list. Thanks to your question.
Thanks. Well, so I also appreciate the question, Frank. That ties into the first bullet point here under current obstacles to overcome, which is, as of now, the only PR method allowed in Colorado is proportional ranked voting, aka STV, and it's only allowed for municipalities. So one obstacle to overcome, regardless of whether we wanted STV or some other proportional system, is to advocate for enabling legislation. To let us do it. And this seems like a great group if we could figure out what we wanted to advocate for, and enabling legislation can encompass multiple things, right? It can give cities broad leeway to try things. But, I think the league is a good organization to advocate for more choice, for experimentation with better voting methods. Another thing to overcome is that right now, even though STV is in theory allowed, the Dominion machines that are used to record and tabulate votes, as of now, the state has only certified those machines for the single winner, instant runoff voting. And I know Celeste has talked to Dwight Shulman in the Secretary of State's office, and he is extremely skittish about anyone running an election on equipment that has not been certified by the state. So this is another thing that I think would be great for us to look into, is what would have to happen to get the state to certify Dominion's STV tabulation software, and is there something we could do to further that along? And this
Thankfully,
one,
Dwight is another member of the panel that I'm talking about, so. we'll
great.
Have more input from him too.
Yeah, but I mean, it seems like that's, hopefully something that doesn't require big legislation. Like, I don't know what the procedure was for certifying Dominion for IRV, but whatever it was, it seems like we could apply some pressure to ask them to do the same thing for the STV software, because it's there. It just needs approval. Then the bullet point is exactly what we're talking about, the lack of Secretary of State rules for conducting audits of proportional voting elections. I'll just mention, this isn't a league effort, but the Election Law Clinic at Harvard, together with some folks in the league, including me and Beth Hendricks and many other organizations, is working on drafting a proposed Colorado state level Voting Rights Act. One of the things they're talking about is, allowing the possibility of proportional representation as a remedy for voting rights violations, which is, not something that has often been done with the Federal Voting Rights Act. And I brought up in the meetings precisely this issue that, we have to be able to audit our elections here, and there's no currently known way of conducting a risk limiting audit for STV elections. So I'm at least trying to, keep this issue alive as something that needs to be worked out with that group.
I just want to jump in for a second, because I can imagine people's eyes kind of rolling. It's like, well, how hard could it be? And it's actually astonishingly surprising just how bad it can be. So, if you had a lot of people running, and you had a lot of people therefore that needed to be eliminated, and suppose you were picking 5 people for a council and there were 20 people running, well, there's 15 factorial different ways to eliminate those people, the different order, and every different order of eliminating people causes the votes for those people to shift in different ways. And so it's actually an intractable computer problem to figure out even what the margin of victory was for a race that uses single transferable vote. You don't even know how many votes it might take to change the result until you do this thing that can, in difficult cases, take more cycles than the age of the universe, using every atom as a computer. I mean, it's just that mind-bogglingly difficult. And people have come up with ways that are kind of helpful, but just to give a hint as to why we're really struggling with this.
I can tell you that this is a question of like that, mathematicians working on elections have asked, is like, is there some way that you could, exactly this, figure out how to compute how many ballots would have to change in order to change the outcome for a margin of victory? And that's very much an open math question. Another thing along the lines of people don't understand this, when I first brought this up, somebody said, well, we'll just tell the Secretary of State to figure it out. I was like, okay, you can't actually order the Secretary of State to overrule math. And it's so, I at least am glad that I'm in that group, but at least being a voice that, we can't just wave a magic wand and say PR for all until we figure out, we're probably not going to wait for the math to catch up. So we probably have to figure out some other way that we will deem acceptable of auditing these elections, but we can't just wish it away. I mean, there's got to be some kind of audit that gives people confidence in the results. Betsy.
So if single transferable vote is already allowed in Colorado for municipalities, are they running into this math problem?
It is not being used. So it's allowed for municipalities. Right now in Colorado, if a municipality wants to conduct a single winner IRV election, they can request that the county coordinate it, and the county is required to coordinate that election. Counties are not required to coordinate STV elections. They are not willing to coordinate STV elections until this voting software is certified at a minimum. And so if a municipality wanted to do this, they have to do it on their own. That means they would have to decide if they're willing to use the Dominion software that the state hasn't certified or some other software. They would have to pay for it themselves. So to the best of my knowledge, no municipality in Colorado has been willing to take this on yet.
Yeah, and from the auditing
Thank you.
standpoint, it is also the many ways of elimination is also a problem for instant runoff voting, and that was unsolved for a while. And then some of the people that are going to be on the panel I'm talking about, and people who are actually writing software for both Boulder County and for the state of Colorado, did solve that problem for instant runoff voting. It's still a very tricky problem there, but it's more complicated with single transferable vote, because even when you choose a winner, some proportion, some fraction of those winner votes get redistributed, and that turns things upside down in a completely different way that makes the math not work as easily. So.
I think there's one paper out there claiming to be able to, a method for an RLA for a 2-winner
Exactly.
STV election, but that is the absolute upper bound that anybody has proposed to date.
Exactly.
Yeah, so a risk limiting audit as currently understood is not going to be the answer to this question. All right. What do you guys think of some of the stuff on this list as action items for this task force to try to undertake? I feel like we talk a lot and we ought to actually try to do some things.
Well, I think I'm going to put together a panel for the Election Verification Network to talk about auditing proportional voting methods.
That would be great, Neil. Thank you. We will definitely put you on the agenda for next month to report back on this, which I guess means we need to have our meeting on a day when you'll be here, huh?
Oh, actually, yeah. If you do it on the 18th, we won't have had the meeting yet. So, but I'll probably know something, but I probably won't be there. So, yeah.
Would it be bad
That's
for
less-
us to wait like 6 weeks and wait until April 4th? If you're not here on the 18th and I'm not here on the 25th, the 25th, oh, actually, it's only 5 weeks because today's the 26th.
You mean April 1st?
What do I mean? Yeah, sorry, I'm not. Yes, I do. I was a month off. I mean, April 1st. That would be 5 weeks from now. That's pretty reasonable, right?
Yeah.
Sounds reasonable.
I don't know if we need to check if that conflicts with any other state league meetings.
Yeah, let's wait for Celeste, but that's a helpful option.
Okay, so I will suggest to Celeste that we do that because I would love to give you the floor for a big chunk of next meeting to report back on that. Yeah, okay. Betsy, do you have something more or is your hand still up from before?
Now, the first bullet, which is proportional ranked choice, is that always single transferable vote, or is there another way to do proportional ranked choice
I
than
believe-
single?
I believe that proportional ranked choice is sort of the popular name being given to STV right now. I don't know.
Okay.
There might be other proportional ways to count ranked ballots for multi-winner elections. And there are variations on single transferable vote, whether you transfer votes, whether you declare winners one at a time or in round, there are nuances even within single transferable vote. But I think the point here is that proportional approval voting, for instance, is not currently legal. And it's not an option for municipalities in Colorado. And if we wanted it to be, we would need to advocate for legislation to make it an option.
Yeah, but I totally agree that thinking about other methods that use a ranked ballot, but make it easier to audit is definitely worth thinking about, and we will be.
Yeah.
Could I interrupt just briefly?
Sure, Frank.
I'm vigorously working on, I should say politely working with who I think will be elected here in Littleton to the General Assembly, but I'm not certain that she's got the mathematical acumen to focus on this. Is there anyone at the state capitol that we should be talking to, Neil? Should I to just at least have a presence with them? Would
I'm
you
sorry, on which topic?
on both proportional representation using ranked voting and also doing auditable elections, proportional elections, maybe using some form of approval voting?
It's always good to bring those up with folks, sure.
Is there anyone that might carry a bill for us?
I think Celeste is, of everyone at this group, Celeste is the one who's most plugged into the legislature and who might be arm twistable to carry a bill. So I would love to have her answer that question. Betsy,
Super.
you put your hand up.
Yeah, so I'm just looking at the first bullet point. You're saying that we can use proportional voting, which I'm assuming is our IRV in municipalities. So like,
Oh, okay. So IRV is single.
Telluride.
To get proportional representation, you have to have multi-winner contests. So IRV is the single winner form of ranked choice voting, but but to get proportional representation, you need the multi-winner version, which is single transferable vote.
Okay, but currently in Colorado, there are municipalities that are using IRV. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So IRV is approved, but the multi-winner single transferable vote is not. So,
Okay.
So when we talk about proportional methods, the only way to have a proportional body is to have a body with more than one person, right? There's no proportional way to elect the governor. The governor's one person, they're from one party. That's not proportional. Right. But the legislature or city council or something can be proportional in various sense. But to get a proportional outcome, you have to elect multiple winners with in a single contest.
Okay. So, all right, I understand the difference now. That's good. But currently, there are municipalities that are using IRV, which we can all agree is way better than the two-party system that we have in most cases in Colorado, right?
Yes.
So is there any reason to not have one of our action items to really push to have IRV allowed at the county level instead of just at the municipality level?
That would be great. I would love to push for any and all better voting methods to be allowed at any and all levels.
Right.
I think what we want to be leery of is requiring any particular voting method because, we as a league have not come down on this side of any one particular method over another, apart from the fact that we advocate for proportional methods wherever possible. But I think, allowing more choice for municipalities, counties, whoever wants to experiment, this is how we'll learn what works best is by, letting a lot of different entities conduct different kinds of elections and see how they go.
Okay. So how would we, what direction would we have to go to try and, right now does the legislature say that you have to use IRV or does it just say that you can use a method that's available to you?
It's a method that's available to municipalities if they choose to use it.
Okay. So how do we make it so that you can do that at the county level?
Yeah, another thing that we should bring up here is that, and Celeste is also very actively working in this, there is a bill, you asked about county commissions. And so there is a bill, last I heard, that was looking at various ways to organize county commissioner elections. And there are a lot of options there. There's, do you have all in districts? Do you have coming from districts but elected at large? Do you have 3 from districts and 2 at large? Do you have 5 at large? And there's a lot of options there. And Celeste has gone through those carefully and has worked through kind of a policy-making approach there. I'm trying to remember what those say in terms of voting methods, but to come back to exactly the point that we're at and the question you're asking, I think it is the league's position that it's most important, and this is at both the national and the state level and the local level in Boulder. It's most important to go for proportional representation. So, and there's often a problem with making one change in elections and then expecting people to make another change shortly thereafter. So I think our strategy is to push for proportional representation in county elections, county commissioner elections, and not to push for example, district elections with instant runoff. Because I think even anything that moves to a district election at the county level is a bad move. It ends up with non-competitive candidates because there's so few to choose from and hardly anybody runs. We see this happening in Broomfield. So in terms of county elections, I think the league position is to push for proportional representation.
And in fact, this is why Celeste is not here, because she is right now testifying at a hearing about this bill, about how county commissioners are elected, advocating to include PR as one of the options that counties could select.
The other point that I want to make before I have to run away is that I think I would disagree with the slide, although I know why it's written this way. I think a home rule municipality or county can do anything it wants in terms of election methods. The hurdles get pretty high if you want to, for example, do proportional ranked choice or any other proportional method, because the county clerk might say, oh, I'm just not going to cooperate with that. And you have to run your own election and mail your own ballots and find your own voting machines and do things that counties and municipalities are just not willing to, or clerks not willing to do. So there is more flexibility, but with that home rule flexibility, you have even greater obstacles to overcome.
Thanks, Neil. Mark.
Yeah, so I think a really simple proportional representation system that ought to be auditable is sort of cumulative votes. So if you have 5 county commissioners, every voter gets 5 votes, and they can give them all to one person or spread them around any way they want.
Can I interrupt just to ask a quick question? So
Yeah.
someone named Skinny has entered the waiting room. Anybody know who that is?
I assume Skinny Winkler.
Okay, so it was just a funny name, so I just wanted to check before I click admit. Okay, go ahead, Mark. Sorry to interrupt.
Well, yeah, I mean, since risk limiting audits for the ranked choice system seem to be pretty much prohibitively difficult, why not give a serious look at a really simple system that was, proposed 150 years ago?
Which system is
I
that?
would say quickly that that is a good thing to consider. I dare say that you're right, that it is very auditable. It is generally considered not to be nearly as strong in guaranteeing proportionality, but it's better than what we're using now. Yeah. So, and it is supported by the election systems that we have now, I dare say, although we should check that. So I would encourage you or anyone else who's interested to kind of ask the technical question of whether our voting systems are tested and supported in using that method, and consider that as kind of a step up.
Yeah. Well, here in Minnesota, I'm not sure I'm going to be very useful.
Yeah, my understanding is that cumulative voting is considered a semi-proportional method. It
Right.
can give proportional outcomes, but it depends on some things, like if a block of voters has too many candidates and their votes are too spread out, then even with cumulative voting, they may not get a proportional result. So it's not as robust in giving proportional results as STV and some other things, but Neil is absolutely right that it's still a big improvement over what we have now. Okay, any other comments before we move on to the next slide? whatever it may hold. Okay, efforts to use better voting methods in cities and towns. This is more about state statute. I think we've talked about some of this stuff because I didn't know this slide was here. So state statute does require county clerks to conduct elections for municipalities if the municipality requests it, using the single winner instant runoff voting. It allows municipalities and special districts to conduct STV, but county clerks may refuse to conduct it. So this is what we might want to look at. What would have to change in order to make STV more practically accessible to municipalities? All right, counties are not currently yet allowed to use better voting methods. This is about the county commissioners. Right now, they're elected in single winner contests, winner take all. This often leads to a board of county commissioners all belonging to the same political party. It definitely does not tend to produce proportional outcomes. And the state league asked to amend the House bill. This is exactly what Celeste is out testifying about right now, and we all wish her success, to try to get proportional ranked voting listed as one of the options that counties could select to elect county commissioners. Review of single transferable votes. So this is the optional bits. Celeste has this link to a quick 3-minute video about how this works. I also have a little presentation with an example. Does anyone want to see or spend time on examples of this, or is everyone here familiar with how STV works?
I'd appreciate seeing the 3-minute video if no one objects.
I don't know that let's see, if I click on that, hang on, let me pause this. Oh, come on, let me pause it. I'm gonna need to stop this share and share my other screen. I don't know if the audio is gonna work well as a share here. Does anyone know? Well, let's just see what happens. All right, if I share Firefox.
I have some recollection that there's a setting you can use to say, make the things like that work better, but I've never tried it.
Okay, the other option is I can put on my professor hat for a few minutes, and I have a presentation that I've written about this and gave to our local voting methods team. And I have that queued up, so maybe that would be better. So how about I put this link in the chat and folks can watch this video if they want.
Very smart.
And rather than spending meeting time on it, and Q&A is always more fun anyway. So how about instead of sharing this, I will find the slides that I have.
And while you're doing that, I'll say goodbye and thanks to everybody for showing up, and here's to making progress.
Thanks so much, Neil, and I really hope that this meeting goes well. I want to hear all about it.
Yeah. Thank you all. I somehow I thought this was a 7:30 end on the meeting, so I've got to leave also.
All right, well, thanks for joining us, and thanks for the information on what's going on in Minnesota.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I enjoy being with you.
We love having you here. Keep coming. Wait. Okay, am I screen sharing a slide that starts?
Yes.
Okay, so what's STV? It's an electoral system for multi-winner elections that tends to produce proportional representation. So here's how it works. From a voter's perspective, it doesn't matter whether it's single winner or multi-winner. The voter just ranks all the candidates. The difference is in what it takes to win. So say I'm trying to elect 3 people to a county commission. Any candidate who gets more than 1/4 of the first place votes would win. And the reason for that N+1 in the denominator there, think about it, when you're electing one person, it takes just over half the votes to win, right? So if you have a little more than that 1/n+1, you can't have more than N people meet that threshold. So that's why that is the threshold. And since votes come in integer numbers, that number, might not be an integer. So the number of votes you need to win, this funny symbol just means that the greatest integer smaller than that fraction, the number of votes divided by the fraction of votes that you need to win, and then you need one more vote than that. And I'm going to do an example that will help with this. So what makes the proportional outcome happen is in the tabulation. So in each round, each ballot is counted for its highest ranked candidate who's still in the race. So this is just like in IRV. I'm only looking at your top ranked votes at any moment. If any candidate gets enough first place votes to exceed that quota, then they are elected. And if they had way more votes than they needed, whatever excess votes they had are transferred to their next choices on this ballot. So the nice thing about this is you can vote for somebody. If your first choice is someone who's going to win overwhelmingly and doesn't really need your vote, you can still vote for them because whatever excess votes they had, those votes are going to go to their next place. So you're still going to get your whole vote. Only a fraction of your vote would be used to elect that first choice person. And if no candidate meets the quota, then it works like IRV. The candidate with the lowest vote total is eliminated and their votes are transferred to the next ranked person on those ballots. And so in every round, either candidate is elected or a candidate is eliminated. Make sense? So in this example, I'm going to assume that there are 100 voters. There are 2 voting factions, each running 5 candidates, and there are 5 seats to be filled. So 10 total candidates for 5 seats. And let's assume that these voters form what are called solid coalitions. Every voter prefers all the candidates on their side over all the candidates on the other side. This is a simplifying assumption. It's not realistic, but it makes the example a little bit easier. The vote threshold that you would need to win a seat is just over 1/6 of votes cast. So out of our 100 voters, that means you need 17 votes to win a seat. So in round 1, let's assume that every A voter lists all their candidates the same way, and every B voter lists their candidates the same way. So there's going to be 60 votes for A1 and 40 votes for B1. So both A1 and B1 have exceeded the quota. They've both got more than 17 votes, and so both of them are elected. Okay, so out of the 60 votes for A, I needed 17 of them to elect A. That means there's now 43 votes left to transfer to A2. And out of the votes for B, I needed 17 to elect B1, so there's now 23 votes left to transfer to B2. So does that make sense how that transfer worked? Okay, so now in round 2, we're still only looking at what's the top ranked candidate on each ballot that's left. So now A2 gets 43 votes, B2 gets 23 votes. Those are still both over 17. So now A2 and B2 are elected. And there's still 26 excess votes for A2 that get transferred to A3 and 6 votes that gets transferred to B3. So we've got one more round, and now we see that A3 has enough votes to exceed the quota, B3 doesn't. So A3 is elected, and that fills the 5th and final seat. And the final result is that we got 3 A candidates and 2 B candidates, which is exactly proportional to the what happened, or the voters' preferences. That was a very simple example. Yeah, Betsy.
But you didn't get rid of the bottom candidate.
In that example, I
did.
didn't, because the voters were so cohesive in their preference for individual candidates. I'm going to do a more complicated example next that will show elimination rounds as well. You're right. In that example, in every round, there was somebody who exceeded the quota and was elected. You can imagine if instead of all the A voters agreeing on their preference order, if they all had different orders, it might be that no one of them would have enough votes to win, and then somebody would be elected and the votes transferred. Because that's more likely what's going to happen in a real election, right? If there's some candidates, we might all be on the same side, but we might have different favorites within that slate of candidates. So here's a more interesting example, and rather than trying to show you all the complete ballots at once, I'm just going to show you one round at a time what happens. So here's an example I've still got 60 A voters and 40 B voters, but let's imagine that the round one votes were distributed among the candidates like this, a little more evenly. So what happens in round one? Audience
A1 is elected.
A1 is elected. So A1 is elected, nobody was eliminated. And A1 had just enough votes. So in round two, there was nothing left to transfer. So round two looks just like round one, only without A2 in it. Now what happens?
B5 is eliminated.
B5 is eliminated. Nobody has enough to meet quota, so we get rid of the lowest ranking candidate. And so all those B5 ballots are going to transfer to their next ranked preference. So I'm imagining that they transfer like this. 3 of them went to B1, 2 of them went to B2, and 1 of them went to B3. So these are the new vote totals in round 2. Now what happens?
B4 is eliminated.
Right, still nobody's over the quota. B4 is eliminated, and now B4's votes are going to transfer to the remaining candidates. And I'm imagining they transfer like this: 5 to B1, 1 to B2, and 2 to B3. Now what happens?
B1 is elected.
B1 is elected. B1 has met the quota. So you see how this process, even if the voters were not cohesive enough to agree who was their first choice candidate, the elimination eventually coalesces them behind a candidate and they still get represented.
Mm-hmm.
This is the kind of thing that can fail to happen with cumulative voting if a faction has too many candidates.
Mm.
So B1 is elected. And again, there's no surplus to transfer. So now here we are in round 5. Now what?
A5 is eliminated.
Look, Celeste made it. Okay, so yeah, so now A5 is eliminated because nobody has the quota, and A5's votes will be transferred. So back to this. And so I'm imagining A5's votes transfer like this. Now what?
A4 is elected.
A4 is elected, nothing to transfer. Now what?
B3 is eliminated.
B3 is eliminated. All of those votes are going to transfer to B2. Now B2 will be elected. Now I'm just down to the last 2 A candidates. Neither one of them has enough
A2.
votes. A2 will transfer, and then A3 will be elected. And still, we got an outcome with 3 A's and 2 B's in proportion. So this is still not quite all the nuances, but that's roughly how STV works and how it works to achieve a proportional outcome in a way that's a little more robust to issues like how many candidates does each faction put up for election than some other things.
So, this is for like city council, county commissioners, things like that. But if we're voting for state representatives or state senators, those are single winner. Like,
to do those with proportional representation would require that we completely redo how we do those. We would have to draw multi-member districts. So for instance, instead of 65 districts for the state house, we could draw 13 districts that each elected 5 members by STV.
So what the position of the League of Women Voters is that we shouldn't do something like IRV for state elections because really we have this grander goal. Is that,
I don't
what
know
I'm
that
hearing?
the position is not that we shouldn't do anything, right? The position is that we advocate for better voting methods that, give voters more of a voice. And if we could have our first choice, yeah, we would love to go all the way to multi-member districts and a proportional voting method. Absent that, IRV would still be an improvement over plurality.
Okay. That's what I think at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, especially since we already have it, we're already using it in municipalities, like, San Miguel County and Pickens County could.
It's hard to know, right? Because these are political questions as well as math questions, which are my forte, and politics is the art of the possible. So, but Neil is right that, incremental change is easier than big change, but if you convince the voters to accept one incremental change, they probably don't want you to come back in the next election and ask for the next thing. It takes time. So, but then if you ask for too much all at once, it's too scary and they say no. So it's not always obvious what's the right thing to try to advocate for. For the time being, I like advocating for these laws that just give municipalities choices rather than,
Right.
because I don't think we would, apart from the fact that we think proportional methods are better than non-proportional methods, the league
Sure.
has not adopted a position on any particular method being preferable. So, you know, and I think there are a lot of open questions. You know, there's provably no perfect method. And so it's always going to be a question of what trade-offs we want to accept. And allowing municipalities to experiment with a variety of methods, I think, would teach us a lot.
Mhm. But we already have that ability, right? Like if I wanted to go to the city council in Durango and petition for using IRV in the city of Durango, I could do that, right? And I would just have to
IRV,
get,
yes, but not approve of voting, not star voting. You know, so IRV is not the only game in town that's better than plurality.
oh, so the legislature just says, the law just says that you can only use IRV?
IRV is the only approved alternative voting
Okay.
method as of right now by the state legislature. Although as Neil said, the rules may be different for home rule cities and counties.
Actually, you can use all single transferable vote for cities.
Right, but
The
we were
county
talking about
clerks
other
won't
single
run the
methods.
election for you. But if a city said, we want to use single transferable vote, then there would be more incentive to have the state legislature pass a bill requiring the county clerks to coordinate with the city and requiring the Secretary of State to set up those rules that we want them to set up, the auditing rule, the auditing procedures, the certification of the testing equipment, the how to conduct the election. Thank you, Jen, for covering the meeting for me.
You're welcome. It's been fun. How did testifying go? We were rooting for you.
There were okay, so I don't know how much I'll start at the beginning. There was a bill to require all counties with 70,000 people to elect 5 county commissioners. Right now, most of the big counties only elect 3 county commissioners, although they could ask the voters to go to 5, but this would just require from top down to go to 5, which I think is not a bad thing. The League of Women Voters was interested in this bill because we wanted to have one of the options for electing the county commissioners be proportional voting. And there already is proportional voting allowed for municipalities, as I just said. So all they'd have to do is add "and counties" to the statute and then add the third option. They only are offering 2 options right now, so add a third option saying you can use proportional ranked voting. A lot of people supported it, mostly just regular citizens. Common Cause supported it. The Jeffco County Clerk and Recorder supported it. I was an amend and for the League of Women Voters of Colorado. And then a bunch of county commissioners opposed it and 1 or 2 individuals. And it was 7-4 in the end to move it on. And it was bipartisan 7 and bipartisan 4. It was pretty interesting. And they're talking about amendments on the floor, but they're not talking about PR. The quote that the guy said was, he didn't have any amendments to suggest. And he said, we don't want PR, proportional representation, to be the enemy of the good.
Why would it be the enemy if it's just an option?
I think Jen, I
is
think
it-
you would like to listen to the testimony because they were talking all about how bad at-large is and how, and I called them on it and I said, Lowell, Massachusetts, they mentioned. And I mentioned Portland, Oregon is going to proportional voting. So I don't know. I think we need a lot more people talking about proportional voting. They're not going to listen to one person representing one organization. But they pay a lot of attention to the county commissioners because they all want to be county commissioners one day because that pays the big bucks.
So maybe we need to be lobbying our county commissioners.
I've talked to the county commissioners and it doesn't, they didn't testify. Nobody from Boulder testified. Larimer and Pueblo each had 2 county commissioners testify. And Boulder, I think, is in a monitor position, but the CCI, Colorado Counties Inc. is opposed to it, and so is the other Colorado County organization.
Incumbents seem to have a habit of being opposed to jeopardizing their job security.
Doesn't it seem weird that they think that going from 3 to 5 would jeopardize? You'd think going from 3 to 5 would give them more colleagues and they would still get elected.
But it would give them less power if they were one of 5 instead of one of 3.
Yeah, you only need 2 people to get anything passed.
Betsy, you have your hand up?
Yeah, would it be possible to get information about that bill, like in the chat or sent to us? I mean, I don't
I'll put
know,
it
we
in
have
the
county
chat right now.
commissioners here sometimes. So, I mean, like, we have a pretty decent population down here, and I feel like we get kind of forgotten about, or not forgotten about, or maybe like we just don't think about stuff that's going on. And with very, we're not Grand Junction. Things are different here in La Plata County. It might be easier to push our county commissioners to something like that. Be in favor of it.
That'd be great.
Well,
And so this is just having 5 instead of 3. This isn't within the bill. It's not including proportional representation.
right now it's not.
Okay.
And if you want, I'll look for the way to listen to the yeah.
So Celeste, something that came up before you were here that we wanted to ask you about. So Neil is going to a big election security conference and sounds like he will have a lot to report back to us that he would like to get on the agenda for the next meeting. But I think he will be there on the proposed meeting date of March 18th. So we were wondering, and that's only 3 weeks from now, and I'm going to be out of town on March 25th. So we were wondering if we could make the next meeting be April 1st instead of March 18th.
Good question. I mean, as you know, I don't have to be at the meeting for it to happen. Hold on a second.
Well, we also didn't know who to ask about whether that would conflict with anything else the league has going on.
Did anybody check the that's Easter Monday. I don't know if that matters. Did anybody check the league calendar to see what else is
No,
happening with LWV Colorado?
that would be a good idea.
So wouldn't another possibility be that you leave the meeting where it's scheduled and Neil does his report at the following meeting? Is there any reason why his report has to happen at the next meeting?
Oh, that would be fine too. I don't have a strong opinion on that either way. What do people think?
So was he at the meeting and then he left?
Yeah, he had to leave at 6:30, I think.
Okay.
But we had a lively discussion about the difficulty of auditing STV elections and sounds like he's going to be talking to a lot of interesting people about how they conduct STV elections in a lot of other places and auditing and all kinds of cool stuff we would like to hear about.
And when is he going to this conference right now, basically?
I think he said that he would be there on March 18th, which is why he won't be at the meeting.
I see. Okay. Okay. So tell me what else happened at the meeting. I mean, I know
Well, I can-
Jen,
I'll put the agenda back up so you can see how far we got, which is of course not nearly as far as we would like to get.
is that Skinny Winkler?
Yes, so we just got to this point of review of single transferable vote. And I was
Okay.
just about wrapped up giving my little spiel with my example of how it works when you showed up.
So there must have been a lot of questions
I not as many as you'd think.
or a
Seems
lot
like-
of discussion or something. Okay. So, can you go back up to the action items,
Yeah.
which is,
There was.
yeah, right there.
Yeah,
What
so
did people,
we spent some time talking about this slide, you know, basically just, I think trying to understand exactly what is and isn't allowed and what, you know, the fact that proportional ranked voting is allowed for municipalities, but it's not required for county clerks to coordinate. And so as a
now,
practical
oh,
matter-
yeah,
As
yeah,
a practical matter, it's not really accessible to most municipalities.
yeah.
But
It to me, it sounds like it's all in the Secretary of State's hands. We either, the Secretary of State has to take the initiative to make it happen, and we've talked to them about this, but they don't see any reason to plan for proportional voting. So what has to happen is a city has to say, we want proportional voting, and then the Secretary of State will react.
well,
It's
Neil said that among other things, he expects Dwight Shellman to be at this meeting he's going to, so he's gonna discuss this there. It sounds like these action items gave Neil a lot of food for thought about things to talk about at this conference and then come back and report to us.
good, because I feel like I love these action items, but I wish I could see the path to get there. Right now, it's all through the Secretary of State or through a legislator passing a bill, making the Secretary of State do these things. And we were lucky to have Chris DeGree Kennedy do it for IRV. I asked him to do it for STV, and he said that's too big a lift. And like today, I tried to get STV for counties, and the response was, don't let proportional representation be the enemy of the good.
I don't even know what that means unless they think that including it would tank the bill.
It was only an option. It was like the third option, and you only pick two of the three options. I just thought it was such, and I still am hoping to ask for this on the floor. It's going to go to the floor, and I'll send the same stuff I sent to the committee, to everybody in all 65 members of the House. Like,
Good for you. Thank you for doing all this work, Celeste. I really appreciate your energy, and I wish I had more bandwidth to be there with you.
it just really got me. They quoted Ruth Bader Ginsburg a couple times. I need some good quotes from you, Jen, like Elena Kagan and what she says about proportional representation, or, I mean,
The Kagan quotes I'm thinking of from the Rucho decision, it's not about PR, it's about gerrymandering.
okay.
She's got some really good stuff to say about gerrymandering, but that's different.
Should we talk about it and go down the rest of the agenda, or we have like 7 minutes left. There's the agenda.
Yeah,
Is
so
there
it's-
anything here people want to talk about in particular?
So I felt like going through this, I, of course, didn't know exactly what you had in mind for all of these agenda items, so I thought
Right.
maybe you should take over from here.
So there are a bunch of citizens initiatives, and if you go to the next slide, I think this is the most timely thing to talk about right now. So because this could be on your ballot this fall, and in order to get an initiative on the ballot, first you write it, then you go to the Ledge Council staff and they make comments on it. And then it goes to the title board, and the last title board, which can sign off on an initiative that you can then collect signatures for, is April 17th. Betsy, your mic is on. And then you have to collect a significant number of signatures. And if it's a constitutional amendment, you have to get them from all 35 Senate districts. Some of you may have seen the right to an abortion, right to reproductive rights 189 that's collecting signatures right now. So it's not an easy process, but if you go to the next slide, you can see there are a lot of citizen initiatives that have come through. 17 of Kent Theories have been rejected, and the only 3 from that batch remaining are not Final Four, which is what they used in Alaska, where they had a choose one plurality election, all candidates running against each other in the primary. And then in the general election, they have instant runoff voting. So none of those 3 that made it through the title board fit under single subject. So they put a bunch more. And these are mostly statutory. And an interesting thing about these, and these have not yet gone to the title board. The first batch, 186 to 197, have made it through the Ledge Council staff review, and everything makes it through the Ledge Council staff review. But an interesting thing about some of these is they're paired. So in order to get around the single subject, it says, this one is calling for an all candidate primary, choose one. This other one is calling for an instant runoff voting general. Each of these will only take effect if they both pass. So it's still a single subject, but they're 2 single subjects that would both collect signatures together. So they're really trying to get around the single subject problem that they see. And I think that's probably smart of them to do that. And Ken Theory has enough money to collect all the signatures he needs. So the title board is really the hard part for him. I don't know if they'll get if the voters will vote for them, but I don't know. It's interesting. So that's Ken Theory with his so many ballot measures. It's making my head spin. And then there are 2 other people, Linda Good and Candace Stutzram, I think. And she actually testified today on one of the election bills, not the one I testified on. And they have 3, but Initiative 201 is to prohibit RCV. I think they mean IRV. And then there are 2 more on candidate ballot access. And then Ross Blazek are allied with Kent Theory. I'm not exactly sure how, but Ryan Ross was invited to the Kent Theory meeting and wasn't there, but that's also a Final Four kind of thing. So I think we have the week off this week, but next week, well, actually, the Good Stutzrium ones are going to be at the Ledge Council staff meeting this week. And then next week, we're back to the title board and back to Ledge Council staff for all the Kent Theory ones. I get tired thinking about this. I don't know if I explained that very well. but they're just overloading the state organizations with initiatives.
Right, well, thank you so much for keeping up with all of that, Celeste.
I feel like I haven't, and like it's impossible to keep up with it unless it's your full-time job, because they have so many going.
Yeah.
Anyway. I don't know if we want to talk about anything else. I guess Betsy McBride, what's happening with Idaho? But first, I think Betsy Nord has a question or a comment.
Yeah, I just was wondering, I was looking at the website that you linked to in the agenda, the email that you sent. And like I'd like to look through these, but I'm wondering if you have any advice of like how to weed things out. I mean, right now looks like there's you can filter by status, but if I look at petition form approved, there isn't anything in it.
I'm confused. Are you looking at House Bill 1177?
No, the initiatives filed. So
Did I send you that,
Yeah.
or was it?
In the email.
Oh, in
that
the
you
email. Okay.
In the
Yeah.
agenda.
Yeah.
that you
Okay.
sent,
I thought you were talking about the chat.
Oh, no. In your email for the agenda, you sent us this link for the initiatives filed. And I don't know if there's a good way to filter this to figure out like if there are any that should be concerned about or pay attention to. I mean, I guess there's no reason to pay attention to the ones that aren't going to get approved to be on the ballot or
Right.
need signatures or things like that.
So because there are so many, the proponents are like basically asked to write and I just put an article about proportional representation in House Bill 1177 in there. That's on the league website that I sent to everybody on the committee, and I will send to everybody in the state legislature. So because it's so confusing, they do things like come up with charts. So last month I made a chart, a spreadsheet, and showing the possible single subject ones, and these three yellow ones at the bottom, that's 134, 135, and 136, and everything else was decided to not be single subject. And it also, the headings of these columns say, you know, petition only ballot access, all candidate primary plus top 4 IRV, whatever. And they have to do that to keep them straight. And then, and the title board has to do that also to keep it straight. And the title board has asked for their copy, but I don't know if they've given it to them in the past or if they're going to give it to them this time. I know some people got a copy of the spread of the list of which number means what. And so, like, I know some of them are paired, but I don't have all that information right at my fingertips right now. I think part of it is it's a fire hose.
Okay.
You know, and it would be one thing if it were September of 2023, but it's almost March of 2024. And so they're running out of time, and they're expecting to, like in the previous slide, it said there was an April 17th deadline. So what happens is they meet the first and third Wednesday of the month. And if people have 7 days to challenge the title board's ruling. And so then it will go back for a rehearing. And so, And the rehearing, the last rehearing is April 17th. So you actually can't think of April 17th as your last day. You have to think of it as 2 weeks before that.
Okay.
So we're running up against against the deadline, and then plus you have to collect all the signatures, and I think the later you wait, the less time you have to collect the signatures. So I think there's like a 6-month maximum, but April 17th, that's only the hearing, and then you have to do the petition form, you have to get that approved, you have to wait your 7 days for the rehearing, etc. Yeah, it's tough.
Okay. Thanks for explaining that.
We
So
didn't
Betsy-
we didn't make a decision about the next meeting date.
I'm okay with March 18th and then letting Neil report the week after. I mean, the month after.
Fine with me.
I mean, he can report, and we don't have to wait for this group to do things. We can start doing things, making requests, because he can do it as an individual even, or whatever. Betsy, what's happening in Idaho?
Well, I gave a short report, Celeste, before you arrived. The initiative is still out for signatures. It will qualify. The Attorney General will sue it, try to overturn it. The legislature last year passed a bill prohibiting ranked choice voting, but the initiative cancels that. So if it's passed, there will be a dueling legal interpretations of that. But before you came tonight, there was also a discussion about how many changes you could ask voters to make. So the incremental approach, you'd have to think strategically if you wanted to go back and ask for a better method. And we do not have the single subject rule in Idaho. So our initiative calls for 2 changes, that being an open primary and then top 4 ranked choice voting. And the university polling on the initiative is that the public really likes the idea of open primary, so they don't have to re-register as Republicans to actually vote, but they don't like ranked choice voting. And both of those changes are in the initiative.
And is it statutory or constitutional?
It's constitutional. Yeah.
I think even if it were statutory, it would take precedence over a past law. It would change the law to make it, yeah. Interesting, it's going constitutional. Do people talk about that part at all?
Well, which people? Oh, in the polling, that didn't come up. We're assuming in the league that part of the resistance to ranked choice voting is people just don't understand how it works. So our job is to try to go to the public and have demonstrations of how it works.
maybe they trust their legislators too. They say they must have banned it for a good reason, you know? I don't know.
Nobody much trusts the legislators right now. It's really been awful.
Uh-huh.
Well, I mean, they're spending time debating whether or not cannibalism ought to be approved in Idaho.
I'm Betsy, seeing as in Littleton, we have the only convicted cannibal in Colorado buried. I put in a pitch that a sandwich is a sandwich, but a manwich is a meal. Thank you. Sorry.
On that note, we're almost 10 minutes past our official ending time, so maybe we should wrap up.
Sure. Ah. Thank you again, Jen, for covering this.
You're welcome. We're really glad you made it. We were all really curious how the testifying was going.
Yeah, well,
Yes.
you know, I guess I think you should listen to the recording if you have a chance, because it's interesting, the arguments they make that just play right into proportional representation, but they don't use those words. They just say districts, Holder versus whatever. Anyway. Okay, thanks, everybody.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Celeste. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for coming, everybody. See you next month.
Did I miss
Thank you.
anything in the chat? Oh, you should stop the recording. And did I miss anything in the chat?
None. Stop.